Right. So let's get started. So as I said, thank you very much for your time and for effectively making an investment in your business this afternoon. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. It's the only thing you can't buy. And I'd like to thank you for coming along, and also congratulate you on having made a decision to invest in learning and bringing more knowledge into your business. One of the issues with being a business owner is that very often we're very busy, but not necessarily in a constructive way. We find ourselves doing the same things over and over again. And as Einstein famously said, the definition of insanity is doing the same things again and again and expecting a different outcome. So hopefully at the end of this session, you will have a whole load of new ideas, new ways of thinking about how to generate profit in your business that you can take back to the office and you can start to apply in your own business immediately. And how you invest your time is one of the keys to business success. I do one of these webinars on time management. So I'm not going to cover that today, but if you are interested, if you have a look at my events page on my website, you'll see what webinars we have coming up, and time management will be one of those shortly. So today, I'm going to reward you with some of the simplest, easiest, and fastest ways to increase your income. So, if I was to ask you right now, what ways could you immediately improve your income? You might think about cutting costs in your business, for example. You might be able to cut the expenses. You might be able perhaps to reduce the costs by perhaps 5%, maybe even 10% if you're lucky. But how much would that actually add to your bottom line? The answer is not nearly as much as if you can get better at sales and marketing. How much more could you make then? So if I could show you ways in which you could double your turnover, or sorry, increase your turnover by about 50% and your gross profit by even more than that, I think that would probably affect your income. It certainly is not going to go down, and I'm going to start by showing you exactly how to do that. Right. So first of all, I just want to talk to you about our definition of a successful business. So I work with lots of business owners. Some are small, some are large. A successful business, though, ultimately, a real business, is a commercial, profitable enterprise. So commercial because you're doing something that there's a market for. People want to buy your products or your services. Obviously, you need to be profitable. Otherwise, the business won't be around for long. It needs to work. And by that, we mean you need to have systems, processes in place, a team of people that can work effectively and efficiently. But the most important aspect of a successful business, a real business, is that it works without you. How many people on the call today could decide to take the next month off, go away, and come back to find their business running perfectly without them? Not many of us, and very often that's because as business owners, we set up a business. We generally set it up with only perhaps ourselves or one other person to start with, and very often we end up creating a business in which we are the sort of hub of the business. We are integral to everything that goes on inside that business. The art of creating a really successful business is the ability to remove yourself from the day-to-day so that the business works without you, and you can focus on doing the things you really want to do, and you can focus on the strategy and the direction of the business rather than the day-to-day admin. So that's ultimately what we try to achieve with our clients, a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. However, in order to get there, we need to make changes to our business. And very often those changes require investment. And so in a moment, I'm going to talk to you about how to generate investment, how to generate profit that you can then invest in your business. So, keys to business success. Sales and marketing are obviously key, and this is specifically what I'm going to talk about in terms of the 5 ways to grow your business in just a moment. But technology is key. This is about creating systems. It's about making yourself more efficient. You've probably heard the saying, systemize the routine, humanize the exceptions. So if you can use technology, if you can create systems within your business will work more efficiently. If you have people working in your business, then they are your greatest asset. And again, I run a webinar specifically about teams, about how to get your teams to work as effectively as possible for you. But if you can create a team of people who are properly trained, who know how to use the systems and technology that's in the business, if they understand the rules of the game so that they can actually use their initiative and take decisions away from you, then your business is going to be successful. And then that last point, or the one at the top of the page, is about leverage, which is very simple. It's about doing more with less. And the more that you can train your people, the more systems you have in place, the more effective your use of technology, then the better able you will be to create leverage in your business and to achieve more with less. So let's talk about sales and marketing. So I don't know if anybody in the room is an accountant, but you're all business owners. So sales and marketing, when you look at your P&L, is generally an expense. It appears under the overheads. It's one of the costs of running the business. But why is it an expense? And should it be an expense? Well, I think, unfortunately, in most businesses, it is an expense. And that's for one very simple reason. That is because most business owners don't understand how their marketing is working in terms of whether or not it generates a return on investment. I worked in the advertising industry, or worked with the advertising industry for a very long time, and I know there is a huge variance in the efficiency of the advertising that gets created, and that applies to big blue chip companies that you see advertising on the television, just as much as it applies to the marketing strategies that you come up with for your own business. A lot of advertising does not work very effectively. Some ads work absolutely brilliantly. The point is, how do we understand which of them are working for us? Because our perspective is that sales and marketing should not be an expense, it should be an investment. And what I mean by that is that every time you spend money or you spend time on your marketing and sales activity, you should know what return is being generated, and you should be able to see whether more money is coming in compared to the effort and the money that has been put into it. And the real reason why sales and marketing is an investment for some businesses, but is an expense for others, is because they don't understand where the return on investment is coming from. In order to understand the effectiveness of your marketing, you need to do two things. You need to test and you need to measure. And this is really simple. How many of you are currently recording the source of all the inquiries that you receive? Is anybody doing that? Okay. Very simply, if you have an inquiry coming into your business, you should be recording 4 things. And you can just do this on a spreadsheet. I mean, it depends obviously on the scale of your business. If you're an online retailer, you might have a lot more inquiries, but you need to know 4 things. Obviously, you need to know the name of the person or the business that's made the inquiry, but you need to understand how they heard about you. So which of your marketing strategies actually drove them to get in touch with you? Or did you use to get in touch with them? But which strategy was it? Where did that lead come from? If it was a referral, you need to make sure you ask them who referred them to you. Because if somebody referred them to you, you need to thank them. Doesn't matter whether they become a customer or not, you must thank the person who's referred them to you. Because if you thank them, they'll do it again. You then need to record, so you need to record how they found out about you, where they've come from. You need to record the value to you of that piece of business. Very roughly, what's it going to be worth to you if they become a client? You need to record whether or not they then became a client. And if you have those 4 pieces of information, you now know which of your marketing strategies is generating the most inquiries. Which of your marketing strategies generates the inquiries typically of the highest value to you? Which marketing strategy generates the inquiries which are most likely to turn into leads? Sorry, most likely to turn into customers for your business. Just by recording that information, all of that is available to you. And that is when your marketing starts to become an investment rather than an expense, because you're no longer spending money without really understanding the impact of that expenditure. So you must measure your marketing activity, and that allows you to test the effectiveness of each strategy. And if you find that you have strategies that are working, that's fantastic. You can continue with those. If not, then you might want to stop them. And again, talking about mindset of expense versus investment, very often when people are looking at customers and how they've acquired them, they look at the acquisition cost. So I've spent £300 on advertising, I've got 10 customers, I paid £30 for each customer. And if you have that mindset, your next logical thought is, well, can I do it any more cheaply? Is there another way I can acquire customers without paying quite so much money for each acquisition? But that's quite a sort of a narrow point of view. The other way of looking at it, so I can let someone into the room. The other way of looking at it is in terms of the lifetime value of your customer. So if you have a customer who spends £550 a year with you for 6 years, that's worth £3,300. If that's the case, you really don't care whether you paid £30 to acquire that customer or whether you paid £50 to acquire that customer. You're still, over the lifetime of that particular client, quids in. And the mindset there is, once I've got this customer, how do I maximize the value of that customer to me? So understand how much it costs to bring customers into your business, and you can do that by testing and measuring. But once you've acquired a customer, think about the long-term relationship you're going to have with them. Think about the lifetime value that customer potentially can bring to you. And how can we increase that? Now, before you can start marketing, do you have a strong USP, unique selling proposition? How many people here have got a strong USP that they're sort of proud of, that's a few lines long and sums up what your business is all about? Something that sets your business apart. Because there's no point in going out and marketing yourself if all you're going to do is bring customers to you, but without having that point of difference, without having that strong rationale for why they should buy from you as opposed to anyone else. Yes, Susan, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, Justin, how niche would you suggest a USP has to be? You know, what we do, there are other companies that do in the UK, and you know, arguably we do it a little bit better, and our finished product is a little bit nicer. But it's not niche. There are, you know, you can buy the machinery we've got, you can pretty much do what we do.
Yeah, and that's a very good question. So let me answer that in a slightly roundabout way. So you can have a USP which is genuinely unique, and some companies manage to do that, but it's quite hard. And one of the problems with a USP is that if you're in a very competitive industry, as soon as you announce your USP, you can be sure that your competitors will be looking at what you're doing, and they will very likely be attempting to copy you. And so sometimes the creation of USP in certain sectors actually is just an arms race. It's a continual arms race. Everybody's looking for an advantage. As soon as they find an advantage, everybody else notices it, and then they look at what they can do to counter that advantage or to match it. So it can be difficult to find a strong USP. But I will make a point of getting in touch with everybody who's here, and I'll send you a copy of a questionnaire that we use to help you to think about what your USP might be. It's about 8 pages long. It asks questions about your business, about your competitors, about the sector, what people value, etc. And we're going to talk about that a bit more in a moment. However, not everybody has a completely unique selling proposition. A lot of people have a selling proposition which is in fact not unique, but they own it because they consistently talk about it and they consistently associate themselves with that particular proposition. And so in the mind of their audience, they own that proposition. A great example of that is Volvo cars. So Volvo have a reputation for being very safe. Now, in the current day and age, with all the rules and regulations about car safety, I doubt very much that Volvo are significantly safer than most of the other cars that you could buy out there, you know, particularly cars at a similar price level. However, because Volvo have talked about safety continuously for probably 40 or 50 years, that is the thing that they are most strongly associated with, and they own that. They own that particular brand territory. And it can be the same with all sorts of other types of products. You know, as long as you are consistent in your marketing, if you can find something that you do well, that your customers value, then you can use that to create a selling proposition which might not be unique, but which nevertheless you can own. And as long as it's something that is relevant and attractive to your target audience, you will get customers coming to you, even if it's not unique. So, and the advantage of having a strong USP is that you don't have price competition. If your product, if your marketing is exactly the same as the other competitors in your sector, then you're always going to be competing on price. In order to charge what you want to charge, you need to have some point of difference, and that can either be through a strong USP, or that can be through potentially a guarantee as well. So creating your niche, a USP or a guarantee. And just another point on marketing before we get on to the detail of this. The most important thing when you're coming up with your marketing strategy, the most important component, first of all, is your target audience. And that comes before message. The most important thing is to know who it is you're trying to reach. And you may have a number of different target audiences, but for each target audience, you need to consider who they are. We call it an avatar. You create a little avatar, a sort of an imaginary picture of the person in your target audience, or if you might perhaps have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different target audiences you're trying to reach. You need to create an avatar for each one of those. And once you've done that, you can flesh out the details. So this avatar, are they, what sort of a business are they, or what sort of a person are they? How old are they? What do they do? Where do they go? Who do they meet? Who do they associate with? What are the things that they like to have or to do? Because that leads you then to understand how to reach them. So let's just say you're selling to, this is going to sound slightly stereotyped. Let's just say your target audience is young mothers. You're targeting, let's say, women between the ages of 25 and 35. That's great. They're all over the place, but how do you get to meet them? Well, if you create an avatar, if they're 25 to 35, their chances are they're going to have children. What do? They go to schools, they go to clubs with their children after school. They meet up with other mothers. So you immediately get a sense of where these people are and how to reach them, because you now know what sort of media or what environment you need to be advertising in order to be able to reach these people. And it's obviously going to be a completely different set of channels compared to an audience of perhaps sort of 55-year-old men. So create avatars, work out what your target audience looks like, how you're going to reach them, then focus on the marketing message, and that needs to be based on your USP and your guarantee. Just a quick point as well about marketing, about owning the conversation, about being the expert in your field. We talked about not wanting to be competing on price. So if you need a new tire, and this is a subject close to my heart right now because my eldest son burst a tire in a pothole last week and it cost me £100 to replace it. However, if you need a new tire, once you've worked out what size the tire is, you'll ring up the local tire fitters. You'll ask them if they've got the tire in stock in the size you want. They'll say, yes, we have. And what's the next question you're going to ask them? How much is it? What does it cost? And if the tire fitter turns around and says that tire was £95, which is what it cost me to replace that one last week, what do you then say? You then say, well, thank you very much. I'm just going to ring a couple of other people and I'll get back to you. However, if when you make that call, you ask them if they've got the particular tire in stock and they say yes, and you say, what's the price? And they just say, I'll answer that question in just a moment, but thank you for your call. In order for me to be able to help you as best I can today, would it be all right if I just ask you a couple of questions? Now, you're all polite people, so you'll say, yes, you can ask me a couple of questions. And so the tire fitter then says, what sort of car do you drive? And what sort of mileage do you typically do each year? And do you drive mostly on motorways, or are they country roads, or is it urban driving? And are you nervous about driving in the rain? Do you get worried about sort of ice and snow on the road? And he goes on like that. And what he's doing now is he's taken control of the conversation. And instead of it being a conversation about price, it's now a conversation about providing you with the best possible service for the thing that you're trying to buy. So you're no longer saying to him, well, actually, you've given me the price, I'm going to go and ask a few other people. Now you're saying, oh, okay. And so he'll come back to you, and if he's intelligent, he'll offer you 2 or 3 different tires. He'll come back with a tire that's optimum for your car, for the mileage you drive, the conditions you drive in. And then he'll also suggest perhaps 1 or 2 alternatives, perhaps a slightly cheaper one, perhaps a slightly more expensive one. But now you don't need to go anywhere else. And that's about taking control of the conversation. And it's about having a script, for example. So if somebody's getting in touch with you to ask about your services, think about all the different factors, all the different criteria that are going to influence the way in which they buy from you, and make sure that you get in there and start asking those questions right at the beginning of the conversation, so that you, first of all, prolong the conversation, but you also take control of it. So now let's get into the detail of the 5 ways. So when I talk to business owners, very often they'll be able to tell me how many customers they have, they know what their turnover is, they generally know how much profit they're making. And that's fantastic, but these are only results, they're outcomes. Knowing these doesn't tell you how to grow your business. It simply gives you a snapshot of how your business is performing at that particular moment in time. So what we need to focus on and create clarity about is the 5 ways to grow your business. There are only 5 ways to grow your business. Once you understand that, it makes marketing much simpler, because you can now concentrate on those 5 things. So here they are. So your customers, if you know how many customers you have, the number of customers you have is a function of how many leads or inquiries you manage to generate, and then how well you convert them. That gives you your customers. Your turnover, your net sales, is the result of how many customers you have, how often they buy from you each year, and the average sale value of each of those purchases. That gives you your turnover. And then your gross profit is your turnover multiplied by your gross profit margin. But these are the only 5 ways in which you can increase the revenue and the profit in your business. So let's just think about each of these, because there's something rather magic about this, which I'm going to demonstrate to you in just a moment. But let's just think about how you can improve these different areas, these 5 areas. So the number of leads. How many of you have a database? How many of you have a database that is up to date and which you actively use to maintain communications with your current customers, your lapsed customers, and anybody else you've ever had a conversation with or who's made an inquiry? If you haven't got a database, you need to get one. And if you have got a database and you're not using it, you need to start using it, because that is an ideal way to start conversations with people, to generate more inquiries. Do you offer vouchers? Do you offer some form of reward to people when they come to you? I hesitate to use the word discount there, because I hate discounting. It creates a precedent which it gets very difficult to get away from. If you can offer people something in terms of added value, that's always better than discounting. As soon as you offer a discounted price, as far as your customer is concerned, that is the new price, and they will always expect that price again. So what value can you add? Do you run events? How do you attract people? Do you use social media? I know some of you do, because I've seen you on LinkedIn regularly. Do you have SEO going on with your website? Do you have strategic alliances with other businesses that have a very similar customer base to yours? Are you actively asking for referrals? Are you actively collecting testimonials from people? All of these things will help you in your marketing to generate more inquiries. I'm not going to go into detail on all these strategies. There's just a few of them. And then the conversion rate. How do you make sure that your inquiries then convert into paying customers? So things like, for example, the script we just talked about. So the tire fitter, he has a checklist of questions he's going to ask everybody that makes an inquiry, because he knows if he asks those questions, he's more likely to make a sale. So have a checklist. Make sure that you ask all the things you need to ask, or you say the things you need to say whenever you have that conversation with a potential customer. A great example of this is a shop assistant. Let's just say that you are going into a clothes shop, you need some new clothes, You can guarantee that within a few minutes of walking in, if the shop assistants are on the ball, someone's going to come up to you, and what are they going to say? They're going to say, hello, can I help you? Hands up somebody who hasn't been asked that by a shop assistant. No one, right. And what do you usually say? No, I'm just looking, thank you. Okay, so by asking that question, the shop assistant has just killed the conversation dead, because you've made the obvious response, and there's no comeback to that. So, and not only that, you feel slightly uncomfortable as well at the prospect of being asked. If you walk into a shop and the assistant comes up to you and says, hello, have you been into our shop before? And if they say yes, they say, oh, I thought I recognized you. Welcome back. We've got a new line of X that's just come in. Let me show them to you. And if they say, no, I've never been here before, you say, well, welcome to our shop. Very glad you've come in today. Let me show you around. And they start to show them around. A great example is a bed retailer that one of my colleagues worked with a few years ago. And very typically, when you went into a bed retailer, they wouldn't have the price on the bed. And so the first thing the prospect was going to ask was, well, what is the price? And they'd say, well, you know, this bed's £2,000, which is not a good price psychologically, but they're thinking, gosh, that's a very nice bed, but it's incredibly expensive. So you can sell the value. So with this particular retailer, they taught their team to say, well, actually, it's not 2,000, it's £2,270, and with that you get a couple of very special things. And then they would ask people, you know, when you buy a bed, normally you've got to dispose of your old bed. You've got to take it out of your home. You've got to take it to the tip. Then you've got to get your new bed home, or it gets delivered to your house and left in the hallway. And then you've got to take it upstairs, and then you've got to put it together. We deliver your new bed to the spot where you want it. We build it for you, and we guarantee that you'll love your new bed. And if at any point you call us in the next year and say, I don't want it, we'll come and take it away from you and give you your money back. And not only that, we will dispose of your old bed for you and take it away. So all of a sudden, we're not talking price. The price suddenly becomes more reasonable because we're talking about all the value that's been added by the shop. In this case, by doing the things that you least want to do yourself. Other ways of improving your conversion rate: if you send out tenders to people, if you have to write proposals, whether you're a tradesman or perhaps a larger business, what does your tender actually look like? Has it got some nice photos of your business and your team? Have you got quotes? Have you got testimonials from past customers in there? Is your USP really prominent in there, explaining why it is that you're better than your competitors? Just adding those things to your tender document will make it better at converting for you. Thinking about the transaction, so how often do people buy from you each year? Well, we talked about, have you got a database? If you've got existing customers, communicate with them, let them know when you've got new things going on. Keep informing them, make sure it's relevant, because whenever anybody sees any of your marketing material, whether it be social media, whether it be a newsletter, whatever it is, they're thinking, what's in it for me? They're about to invest 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of their time reading your material. They want to know what's in it for me, because otherwise, if they spend 5 minutes reading your marketing content and they discover that there's nothing in there of any interest to them, they haven't learned anything, then they might think twice before they do it again. So think about communicating with people regularly, but always try to educate them, always try to make it relevant, always answer that question, what's in it for them? If you are the sort of business that has recurring customers, do you book an appointment with them? Think about hairdressers. Do you book an appointment with them or do they book an appointment for you before you leave after your current appointment? Most of them, if they've got any sense, do. You can offer people an upgrade. You can offer an extra something or other, or you know, some sort of bonus for buying. If you can track your customers' spending patterns, you can then make offers to them that reflect the patterns of spending, which might encourage them to buy more. And things like average sale value. What can you do to increase the value of the sale? What can you add to your service that's going to make it more valuable, that you can charge more money? There's a great example here of a roofer that we worked with a number of years ago, and he had a real problem with his price competition. So his average sale value, he was actually having to discount by 25% from the price he wanted to charge every time he got an inquiry, because he had no point of difference and he was just competing on price with other roofers. And so we were talking to him and we said, fine, well, how can you make yourself stand out from the competition? And he said, well, I don't know, I do roofs, you know, as do all the other roofers. And we said, fine, well, go and talk to your customers, go and find out what concerns they have when they're buying a roof, when they're getting a roofer in. So he went back and he did some research with his past customers, and in fact with anybody else that he could get hold of. And he said, well, what really worries you about getting a roofer in? And three things came to the fore. The first one was people were going to be stuck at home waiting for the people to turn up, and they wouldn't turn up on time, and they'd waste a day or whatever. The second thing was they were worried that they would make a mess, that their house, their garden would be left looking like a tip. And the third thing they were worried about was that all these roofers would be up on the scaffolding, up on the roof, and they'd be swearing and shouting, and they thought, well, if I've got young children and I've got neighbours, I really don't want that. So having spoken to people and found this out, it's very simple. He created a guarantee. Now, his guarantee was quite a radical one. I'm going to explain it to you in a moment. But you don't have to be particularly radical if you want to create a guarantee and stand out from your competitors. You can just find something that you feel that you consistently deliver and that you know that your customers value, and just guarantee to deliver that particular thing each time they buy from you. But in this particular case, having asked all these questions, he created a guarantee. And he basically said, when you commission us to do your roof, we guarantee we'll be on time or up to 10 minutes early. We guarantee that we will leave your house and your garden at least as tidy, if not tidier than it was when we arrived. And we guarantee that you will not hear any swearing, effing, or blinding from any of our workmen while they're working on your property. Now, that's great. But he then went on to say, and if this doesn't happen, if any one of these things don't happen, you can have your roof for free. We will not charge you for your roof. So suddenly, he had people buying his roofs, buying his services at full price. He no longer had to discount by 25% because they felt so comfortable in getting him in. And he was able to turn around to his workforce and say, right, you can all have a 20% pay increase, but if you invalidate my guarantee while you're working for these people, I will not pay you. And so everybody was happy. The customers were getting the service they wanted. The worries and concerns that they might have were being allayed, and his workmen had to mind their language and turn up on time, but they were being paid 20% more for the job, so they were very happy too. So that's a way of increasing the sale value. And then things like your gross profit margin. Obviously, you can improve your profit margin by looking to cut your overheads and your direct costs, but actually other ways to do that are to, for example, increase your prices. Right now is an ideal time, I sound a bit like a government spokesman trying to bury bad news, but right now is a fantastic time to put your prices up. If it's something that you've not done for a long time because you've been frightened of doing so and concerned about the impact on your customers. Right now, everybody's putting their prices up and no one is batting an eyelid. So there are other ways to improve your profit margin, but that's an obvious one. So the reason I've just taken you through all of this is because I want to now show you the magical impact of some improvements in each of these areas. So I'm just going to run through some made up numbers here. So this business has 4,000 leads. It converts 25% of them. So they have 1,000 customers a year. They have 2 transactions per year on average, and each transaction is worth £100. So the business has sales of £200,000. They have a 25% profit margin, so they have £50,000 of gross profit in the business. However, what happens if we can increase that by just 10%? If we go to each of these 5 areas of the business and we look at ways in which we can specifically increase the number of leads or the average sale value or our gross margin, look what happens if we do that by 10%. So in this example, the number of leads goes up to 4,400. The conversion rate goes up by 10%, not 10 points, but 10%. So it's 27.5. So we have 1,210 customers. We now have 2.2 transactions a year, an average sale of £110. And so our turnover has actually gone up by just under 50%. And if we can improve our profit margin by another 10%, so we can take that from 25 to 27.5, then our gross profit is now 80,500. So just by making small improvements, by focusing on each one of these areas, we've got a 46% increase in your revenue and a 61% increase in your gross profit. And if you would like, I can send you our little sort of sheet which outlines that 5 ways process, but it has something like 400 different strategies on there across those 5 areas that you can implement in your business. So be focused. If you're thinking about sales and marketing, if you're thinking about how to grow your business, how to generate 61% improvement in your profits, focus on those 5 areas. How many leads, how well you convert them, number of transactions, average sale value, and your gross margin. And if you can find a small improvement in all of those, and 10% is not a lot, then you can grow your profits by 61%. And I've, within ActionCOACH, we've seen customers grow their profits by hundreds of % in their first 12 months, just because they've had the clarity and the focus on what they should be addressing in terms of their marketing. So, to quote Jim Rohn, very famous American business philosopher, probably the original business philosopher. He said, "Never wish your life were easier, wish that you were better, and work harder on yourself than you do on your job." And what that really means is you need to learn. You need to learn as individuals, you need to improve as individuals so that you can do things better, so that your job becomes easier and your business grows because you're learning. And if you've never come across Jim Rohn before, then I highly recommend his first book, which is called 7 Strategies for Wealth and Happiness. And if you go online, and look him up, you will not be able to move for very popular quotes and the various other books he's written. And indeed, you'll even find him on YouTube, although he's slightly pre-YouTube generation. And then just something else here about Brad Sugars, which is about learning as well. Brad Sugars founded ActionCOACH 30 years ago, and one of his favorite sayings is, "Where you'll be in 5 years' time will depend on the books you read, the people you associate, and the actions you take. And again, this refers really to learning. Brad Sugars actually went to see Jim Rohn speaking in Australia, which is where Brad comes from, probably 40 odd years ago. And he managed to get to, and he was only a teenager at the time. He went sort of and met Jim Rohn after the event and asked him how he could become successful. And Jim Rohn said to him, you need to learn. You need to read a book a week for the rest of your life. And if you do that, you will be successful. And that's exactly what Brad Sugars has done. He reads a book every week, and he has done so for the last 40 years. And he's now a multimillionaire living just outside Las Vegas. So learning, because if you want better or new results in your business, then you need to make better and new decisions in order to move it in that direction. Right, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. We've taken about 45 minutes. Has anybody got any particular questions they'd like to ask right now? No? I think I have contact details for most of you from when you booked to attend, but I will get in touch with you all. I'll send you details of that USP and guarantee questionnaire, and I'll also send you the 5 ways sheet I mentioned with the various marketing tactics that you can use to grow each of those 5 areas. But thank you very much for attending, and I hope you've enjoyed it and got lots of learning from it. Thank you very much.